Hi guys, Veronica here, and I'm back with another digital scrapbooking tutorial. Today we're going to learn how to use texture overlays to enhance photos and complement your digital scrapbook layouts. Did you know that by simply adding texture overlays in Photoshop, you can make a good photo great? In example, you can see I have my original here, and then I'm going to show you how to apply your texture overlays and create 2 additional stunning effects. Texture overlays can take the place of Photoshop actions. Additionally, when you're using texture overlays instead of using actions, you will have more control over how the effect is applied to your image, and I'm going to be showing you that here. In this tutorial, I'm going to be using my depth and warmth textures to show you how to use overlays to create a variety of effects on a single image. And I'll include a link to the textures in the description, but you'll be able to use any textures to enhance images to your liking. To get started, we are going to begin by placing our textures onto our document. And of course, I'm working on a copy of my original file. To do that, you just want to go to your history panel, click this little icon here, and duplicate the state, and then you just close out your original document. Then we'll go to File, Place, and select our texture. Choose Place. Next, we'll go to Edit, Transform, Rotate 90 degrees, and then we're going to hold in our Shift key and just drag that up to size. Photoshop actually placed this file much smaller than the original file size, so I don't have to worry about losing quality as I'm resizing the image. Once you have it sized to fit, hit Enter on your keyboard, and you'll see that it rendered this document as a vector object. So what we'll want to do is right-click and choose Rasterize Layer. Now what I've done is created an action which will repeat those same exact steps. So once I've placed my document, it's going to come in here and rotate it for me, transform it, and resize it to the size I need, and then rasterize it. And that will save me a lot of time. So what we're going to do now is set this layer to overlay, and of course always play with your blend modes until you achieve the effect that you desire. We're going to set the opacity of this layer to 29%. And next I'm going to bring in another file, and I'll do that by going to File, Place, and this time we're going to be using this texture. Hit Enter on the keyboard to apply, and then I'm going to run my action. And you can see it did that step for me. We're going to set this layer to lighten, and we're going to bring the opacity way down to about 15%. Now I'm going to grab a soft eraser brush, and you can see I have my brush size set to 500, but you'll want to set your brush according to the size of the image that you're working on. I have my hardness set to 0, and I have my opacity of the brush set to 50% so that I'm not going to erase all of the texture, which would really leave a weird effect. And you want to make sure that you change this back to 100% when you're finished your document, because you don't know how many times I have opened up a new file and started erasing and started thinking, hey, why isn't this eraser brush working? And it's because I didn't have it set to the right opacity. And then you just want to come in here and start erasing over the skin tone. And I'm going to do that on both of the texture layers, so that she has a much more natural effect. And that is it. All I'm going to do now is come over here and add a few adjustment layers. I'll start with the curves, And then I like to add 2 points, one here and one here, and then this gives me a little bit more contrast. And finally, I'll come and add a hue saturation layer, and I'm going to go in here and work on my reds, and I'm just going to remove some of the redness from that, and I'll also bump up the lightness. I'm going to drag my curves layer up above the top layer so that it's a little bit brighter. And there you have it. That's effect number 1. Actually, I think I'm going to boost up my lightness a little bit more. And that looks perfect. So what I'm going to do is come in here and group these effects, and I'm going to do that by just doing Control G or Command G on a Mac, and then it sets that to pass through. So I can just toggle this off and you can see what the original image looked like and toggle it back on again. And a great thing about grouping is you can now set the opacity of this. So if you decided you didn't like that effect as much, you can play with the opacity slider. And if I bring that down to 65%, I think I like it even just a little bit better. So you see, that's a great effect. Now what I'm going to do is toggle that off and show you just a couple more effects that you can do with some different textures. So bring in as many textures as you like, or just work with one texture. It's really up to you. So I'm going to go to File, Place, and I'm going to bring in this time this texture. And you can see it's very colorful, so it's going to add a lot more warmth to the image. And I'm going to choose Place, hit Enter on the keyboard, and once again run my action. And I'm going to set this to soft light, and I'm going to bring the opacity down to about 49%. And then I'll zoom up to see if that has too much texture in her skin. And actually, I think this looks perfect. It gives a little bit of texture, making it look somewhat like a canvas portrait. And I like that. So I'm not going to erase anything from this, but what I will do is come in here and add a curves layer. This time I'm only going to use 1 point because I only want to increase the brightness. And I'll toggle that off to see if I like that effect. And I do. That looks really good. Maybe I'll play with my opacity slider to see if I can make it look better. And I think that looks perfect. So once again, I'm going to group these effects, Control G or Command G on a Mac, and then toggle that off, and you can see what that looks like. You see it has a lot more red to it, but in this instance I happen to like that, so I'm not going to remove it. And finally, for our last effect, this actually is going to give a black and white appearance. So we're going to go to File, Place, and our very last texture, we'll place it, hit Enter on the keyboard, run our action. And in case you don't know how to run an action, I do believe I have a tutorial on it, and if I can find it, I will post the link in the description. But recording actions is really easy, nothing to worry about there. I'm sure anybody can do it. With this texture, all I'm going to do is change my blend mode to saturation at 100%. And I think that I will also add a little bit more contrast. So I'll come here once again on my curve layers, create 2 points. I'll drag this one down, and you see how that already bumps up the darks. I will drag this one up, that bumps up the lights. Okay, and that looks pretty good. If I zoom in here, you'll see like there's some orange, and I will go in here and try and get rid of that. So I'll go to my I don't know if it's reds, it could possibly be yellow, and I'll just drag that out, and that seemed to do the trick. So that red is not there underneath her eye anymore, and I am pleased with those results. I might even try to bump up the lightness a little bit. Okay, that looks absolutely perfect. You know, I might try this to duplicate this layer and set it to screen. But I'm going to bring the opacity way, 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 way down to about 15%. And you see that gives it just a little bit of texture. And finally, I can group these layers, Control G or Command G on a Mac. And if I toggle them off and on, you can see she has some veins in her face. I thought that was in the texture, but it's actually in her skin. We're going to leave that there. She'll have to contend with that when she's older. Okay, so that's it. There you have it. I've shown you some great ways of using textures to enhance your photos. I hope you like this tutorial. If you do, of course, remember to share, like, and I hope that by now you've hit that subscribe button. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time.